Hey everybody. Hey everybody. Welcome to another episode of Tuesday Night Live. Oh, always last minute. I just got the new filter in. This is supposed to as you can see, you can adjust it. So this is supposed to help out with the filming of the welding. So that's something we're going to be working on. See, Ryan's on. Hey, how you doing, man? Glad to have you on. So yeah, so I was just unpacking that stuff as it came in just now. So it got me a little off guard there, but hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. You know, definitely appreciate all the people that have given their all for the country. Give us this opportunity to have a great free country where we can do stuff that like we do. So that was a pretty good weekend. And then got some other things done around the shop and stuff this weekend. Pretty much didn't do much Sunday or Monday. But we made some progress on the 4-cylinder crankshaft deal, and I got a couple little slides to show you on that, and the Aeroquip AC hoses. We didn't get a chance to talk about those last week, so I wanted to finish up the AC portion with that, and then we will move on. So great to have everybody on here tonight, and that's pretty much all. I don't have a lot to updates to give you. Have been working on the wiring harness for the Oleynik truck. We're going to go back up there tomorrow, up to DNR. I got the injectors finally for it. I got AC and all that stuff for it, so we can get a lot of stuff hooked up and finalized. And I don't have the wiring harness done yet, but really close. So maybe by the end of the week, I might go back up Thursday or Friday. Maybe we can have that thing where it'll be ready to crank up. So we'll see how that goes. And pretty much everything's got going on. So let's see here. So you guys remember we were talking last week about the AC lines and components. And I mentioned the Aeroquip stuff, and I didn't get any of the pictures for any of that stuff. So I wanted to go ahead and show you some things on that, because that's another great option for hot rods. It's not it's a little pricey, but it is a good option. So there's the AC lines from Aeroquip. They're stainless manifolds, and then they use a braided PTFE. Hey Rick, how you doing? See, you got the back glass working on it. Good deal, man. Yeah, so this is a pricey but very nice looking AC line deal for the cars. It's a braided PTFE, like I said, so you got a nylon PTFE lining with steel braid over top of it for protection and for strength. And then, of course, they've got fittings in most any kind of option you want. Like that's a 150 with the service port on it. There's a 90 with a service port. A straight. One was female, one was a male. As far as the O-ring goes in here, there's a inline service port. So a bunch of different options you can get to do these. Of course, you can still use the bulkhead fittings. These will go to your bulkhead fittings, and then so you can keep your lines clean. And that is one thing that you could do, is you could do the Aeroquip under the hood and then do the regular rubber hoses in the fender well where you can't see them. So that's not always an option. And on any PTFE line, this is basically how you put them together. The fitting has an inner tube coming out that goes inside the PTFE line. You have a ferrule that fits over top of the line, and then it crimps down with this sleeve. That's why it's got such a neck down on the collar. It crushes this into the PTFE, and that's what holds the fittings together. Now, one good thing about a fitting, whether it's a regular braided line or an AC line, when it's PTFE, the burst pressures are very high, usually in the 3,000 range. So obviously you can use the PTFE lines for power steering and stuff like that. But it goes together the same way. What you got to do when you there's the ferrule. I couldn't get a good picture of the inside, but it's got a couple barbs on the inside to grab the nylon. So what you got to do when you cut it, you slide your nut on, and then you got to use a pick and carefully open up the braid so that you can get the ferrule down inside. Now the braid will, when this nut goes on, the braid ends up going over top of the ferrule, and it kind of locks everything in. This hose is probably not as an expensive or quality hose as most, because I've had a very hard time ever getting one to open up like that. But you do have to try to get them opened up all you can. And if you look back here in the background, it's kind of blurry. But you can see the little protrusion coming off the fitting that would go down inside this lining. Now here's a picture with the ferrule in place, and you can see the nylon is up against this lip. That is crucial to making these fittings work. That nylon needs to be completely butted up against the ferrule, which obviously also means the hose needs to be cut as square as you can so that it fully seats inside that ferrule. Now to push the ferrule on, you can do it by hand if you can get them opened up like this, but typically you can't. So you need to have a tool to push the ferrule on. So this is a tool that has interchangeable pieces. I tried to find the crossbar style that I have. I guess they don't even sell them anymore because I couldn't even find a picture on the internet with it. But so this would be your inner the tool to go. Let me bring that up. So this piece would go inside the nylon, and then this edge here pushes the ferrule in. So you clamp the hose and you push it, and you use that to work the ferrule all the way onto the nylon. Yeah, Ryan says probably most overlooked expense. Nice hardware and lines can be expensive, but they do look sweet. You're right, they do. And I have built a couple of cars with this type line system, but very few. And the only other thing that I'm not crazy about is the fact that with the nylon or with the stainless steel braiding, over time the braids start getting loose wires, and then they're really cut prone when you're working in the engine bay with them. I know like Fragola has all the black coated PTFE line. I don't know if they make that for the AC, but that would probably be pretty nice because it would at least have a black coating on it to keep them from the braids from coming out and being razor blades. So here you can see that how they normally, and this is how your braid normally comes apart. It doesn't open up like that previous picture did. Usually you have to fight it just to get it out. You can't have one of these wires from the outside braiding going between the ferrule and the nylons. That's the one hard part about these things, is trying to get a good square cut and then getting the braiding opened up enough that you can get the ferrule over the nylon inner liner, but not get the braid wires inside it, because they'll cut the nylon. Nylon without the braid has no strength at all. Basically, the braid is what gives it its strength. And you can see here how the braid is kind of going over the beginning of the ferrule. So when the nut goes on and you lock it down, it really makes a strong junction, and that's why they can rate them at 3,000 psi burst rates. So I just wanted to show you guys that. That was just one of the things that I didn't get to show before. But it's a good option, and being weird, I'm giving you guys all these options on the AC stuff. I needed to show it to you. Like I said, a lot of people probably won't be using them because of the expense, but still an option. So that's pretty much everything with the AC portion now. Didn't get in any of the AC charging and all that kind of stuff. We'll do that for another time when I've actually got something in the shop that we're doing, so I can give you guys some good tips and tricks on that. But that's pretty much it. So last week I showed you guys the video on the 4-cylinder crank that I was having a problem with it having a high spot when I was rotating it, so I assumed maybe the crank was bent. I put it in my lathe and checked it with a dial indicator, which I showed in the video, and I did preface it that that's not the correct way of doing it, and but it was the only thing I had on hand, and I was just trying to come up with some kind of solution. The weird thing is, I did take the crank to my friend's Tim Eichhorn over at MPR Race Engines. He has a crank fixture with the V block, so we could check the crank. And it's crazy how in my lathe it showed 9.5 thousandths run out. We put it on the V blocks, and it's less than 0.5 thousandths run out total. So the crank wasn't bent at all, or not at least enough that it needs to be straightened or anything like that. The only thing I can think of is both the steady rest and the main shaft where the chuck hooks up on the lathe. There's a lot of play in those bearings. I noticed that when I put my hand on, I could make the dial indicator move just by resting my hand on the chuck. So obviously that's where those issues were, besides the fact that we're clamping it on the flange and the snout and not on the journals that the main bearings ride on. So I got some stuff here. Okay. So there's Tim's logo there. Hey, Chris, how you doing? And that's Tim, obviously the older guy, and his son Tyler, and they have quite a few techs working there now. I had Kyle working with me on the crankshaft, and these guys have a great machine shop. Luckily for me, they're less than 2 miles away. Unfortunately, they're heavy into Ford race engines, and they were really big in the NMRA, which obviously now that series has went bankrupt, but still there was a whole fleet of Ford racers that have over the years used these guys. And so when I went there today, they were nice enough to let me bring in the crank, and they did it while I was there. But I asked Kyle what their engine count was, and currently they have 160 engines there, so quite busy. One of the reasons why I don't get to take much of my stuff to them, because the workload is so busy. I don't have really a lot of time that I can wait. So it is what it is. So this is a crank straightening machine. It's not theirs. I thought I got some pictures of theirs, but I must not have had my camera set right. But so you got a V block here, and you got a V block on the back. These slide back and forth, so you can put them on different journals on the crank. You have a dial indicator that sweeps under the crank, and then if you need to straighten it, you have this J hook that grabs it, and then there's a hydraulic press underneath, so you can go to the journals on either side, find what would be the highest spot, put the hydraulic press on that, and then you can bring it around. So you don't want high, Dave, how you doing? You don't want high spots on the bearing, but if the crank was bent and you're rolling it around, on the dial indicator you would see the high spot, and then that's where you would put the arm and then pump the press and pull it down, and that's how you would straighten it. You move these V blocks here to different throws in the crank, and you can play around it. Just kind of one of those things. You just got to turn it slowly by hand, find the spot, give it a go, and then keep checking it till you get the crank straight. So obviously, you don't want to do a lot of it, but if if it's crank is slightly out of trueness, you could do that. Here's the same machine that they have, but kind of shows you from a different angle. So they got the V block set up on here. Hey John, how you doing? And you got another one there, and then because they welded this journal here, this crank, it took it out of shape. So they put this fixture here, and they can pull it down with the hydraulic press, and then remike the crank until they get it perfectly round. This is actually the only picture I have of their machine, but basically the same thing. So you can see they got pieces of brass that the crank actually rides on. And here's your dial indicator. Kyle checked the rear main last, and he had this on the fourth throw, and that one was on the second throw. And so the journal that you're testing, you put on the end of here, and if it was bent, you would see it goes. The dial indicator would show high and low, just like I did on mine. But you can see it's 180 from where this fixture would be to grab it. So that's how they try to do that. It's kind of a where you find the high spot. Say it's here, and you find the high spot, and you put the fixture on there, and you bend it this way, take that off, and then spin it again till it's straight, and then you keep going back and forth on every journal until everybody's happy. And the big reason why you don't want a crank bent is because you've got 5 main journals in the block, and you got caps, and you have a tight bearing clearance, like 2 to 3 thou. So if the crank was bent more than that, the crank is going to drag. It's going to squeeze all the oil out. Yeah, Dave, this is on the same crank that we had last week. So the end play in my lathe was showing it being much worse, plus the fact that I didn't grab it in the right places. You really have to let it ride on the actual main bearing journals like they do in this fixture. See, in this fixture, they got these V blocks here that are brass, so it doesn't mark the crank. And you can slide these back and forth and check each group of main journals in the throw. So if you go back to like this picture here, you can see they've got this V block here. There's your rear main. That's the 4th main. There's your 3rd. They're working on the 2nd on this picture, and there's the front main cap. So the whole idea is that you want all of these main journals to be true to one another, because you're trying to make it absolutely in a straight line. So it was good news for Mike and Chris that their crank was fine, and quarter thousandths, that would be almost impossible to get out. But when I was talking to Kyle, and we were discussing the markings on the bearings, and a couple things came to mind between both of us. One, which we talked about last week, is you've got this very lightweight crank with a converter hanging, a flex plate and a converter hanging off the end of it, and the transmission where the converter goes into the front pump of the transmission isn't as tight tolerance as the engine is. So the crank, the balancer the torque converter can kind of bounce around a little bit in there, especially on an engine like this. You got a very light 4-cylinder crank. The engine turns almost 10,000 RPMs, and it's probably leaving the starting line at close to 7,000 RPM. So when you've got all that mass turning at that kind of RPM, and the driver lets go of the trans brake, and the tires plant, and it accelerates the car, the crank can move around. And that does happen, and that's probably why the bearings have the witness mark on the rear main that we saw. But obviously, the crank is not bent, so it's not from that. But that doesn't mean the crank won't flex when it's in the running situation. The other thing is the thrust was super tight. So that's just compounds the issue of now the crank is flexing but has nowhere to go, and that's probably where my drag came in. As we're rotating it, there could be some high lows on the flange for the thrust. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the end clearance on the thrust bearings and get it all back together, and then we'll recheck the free play of the crank. So I'll show you guys that next week. I'll probably work on that on Thursday. So more to come on that. Right. On the crank, I had those markings on there where I thought where the high spot was. But like I said, I was grabbing the crank off the snout on the back of it, which that could be very possibly not machined properly, or 100% perpendicular to the main journals. And I was grabbing off the front snout. I had a bolt in the end of the snout where the balancer would normally go, and even though I zeroed that bolt out, that doesn't mean that bolt hole for the balancer may not have been drilled square in the center of the crank. So again, those are just things you can't tell, and that's why I even prefaced it last week that the way I was testing it was not the right way to do it, but that's all I had. Now that I've seen what they have, obviously from now on I'm just going to run it right over to them guys and let them check it, and that way I won't have to take all my time trying to set it up in the lathe to check it all out and find out that I was wrong and it was actually nothing wrong with it. So but that's all right. That's how we all learn. Every day should be a learning process in every day of life. That's how we get to where we are, right? So while we had it there, Kyle went ahead and put a polish on the crank. And so we talked about this before. This is the tool that you use. It's a long belt with a motor. You can control it, and then it kind of rides on the crankshaft journal. Here, this is Kyle, the only picture I got that came out. But he's got the crank in the lathe. Now, of course, we're working on the centers here, but we're not measuring anything. It doesn't matter. The belt is riding on the journal, so it doesn't matter that whether it runs true in the machine. You're just using the lathe to rotate the crank. So, I think, Dave, you're talking about the markings on the rear main bearing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is those are probably from when the car launches and the crank gets a twist in it for a split second. That's why it's got that polish mark there. Plus the journal, the bearing insert to journal clearance on this was a lot tighter than I would normally run. But since it's not an engine that I assembled, and obviously I don't have the engine builder to communicate with on it, we're going to go ahead and let it ride because it's been racing that way. In fact, the motor just set a national record, so we're not going to try to rewrite the book or anything. We're just trying to freshen it up and just make sure we have everything taken care of. So anyway, this is Kyle polishing the crank for me. It's just another picture of one of those machines, another one. And then there's the crank back at my place. And can't see in this picture, it's not that close, but you can see here that, that's not what I want. See if I can find it. It's too tight. There we go. So when they do the polishing, I should have got a picture from before. I always call it record players. You'll get because of dirt and particles going through the engine. Some of the stuff is so microscopic your oil filter won't catch it, but you'll end up with these little grooves in the crankshaft. I call it record player because it kind of looks like the grooves in a record. So that's what we do when we polish the crank, is we're taking all those high spots off to get rid of all that, to start off with a fresh journal again. So Kyle was nice enough to do that for me. There's a pretty good picture of a rod throw. That's a little too close, but you can see they got the grain of the metal, but there's no grooves or any of that stuff in there. So really nice, and that'll ride in the bearings really good. So that thing is all set to go now, and I can go ahead and assemble that engine and get that thing back to Mike, so you can, when he gets his cylinder head back, you can put it back in his car. So that was good. We got that taken care of, and we verified the crank issue. And again, like I said, once I put the thing back in the block and do my ratchet test, we should see that after the thrust is fixed, it should be gliding, no problem at all. But if nothing else, it still proves that if on the ratchet spin test, if something happens, you need to look closely, because there's probably something wrong. And I'm still at the point where I'm still believing that was the case. I may have jumped the gun on crank being bent, but there was still something going on with it, and we're gonna, like I said, clearance the rear cap and get that taken care of. And while I was there, I was also talking to him about Leo's 4200. I've got that cylinder head back together, and I'm getting ready to do my oil pressure test. So if you guys remember, and for people that may not have been on when we were talking about it probably about a month or two ago, we were having that problem where number 2 exhaust valves are either drying out or not getting enough lubrication, but the end result is they're sticking. When I went over to look at Leo's car, we thought the spring, because it's an oversized spring, was dragging on the casting. We did some clearance work. That didn't seem to fix it. So we pulled the cylinder head. I brought it back to my buddy Mike, and he went through the cylinder head again, and only thing he could find is that the valve stems were dry. So we're thinking we had a lubrication problem because it's only on that particular cylinder. But talking with Tyler, so at MPR, Tyler Eichhorn, he's the one who does most of the cylinder head work, as far as valve guides, valve stems, valve lash, valve job, rocker ratios, and all that stuff. And we were talking about that because the Ford Coyote engines and some of your other, like your, well, the Hemis are actually center cam, but any of the overhead cam motors, he's run into a couple situations that were similar to this, and obviously lubrication could be one of them. Another thing that he highlighted, which I'm going to go ahead and check, is because of the high lift cam, that it's possible that the lifter, the rocker arm, it's a rocker arm combination cam follower, that it's going, the travel across the valve tip is going so far over that it's actually putting a lot of side load on the valve stem, which then would cause friction and then would make heat, which will dry the valve out. So he said he has seen that when maybe the valve stem heights aren't all the same. So that's another thing we're going to check. So I'm going to dike them all the valve tips, and then go ahead and do my valve lash. So I'll be spinning the motor over, or spinning the cam over, and the followers will be rolling up and down on the valve stem, and they'll actually wear the dikem off where they're actually riding. So then I can take it apart and see if all of them have the same footprint from the follower, which has a roller on it. So if they all follow the same, then that may not be the issue. But if it looks like it's going closer to the edge of the valve stem, tip, then that may be the problem. Maybe those two valves are just a tick shorter than ones in the other cylinders. So we're going to go over all that. I'll try to do that this maybe Saturday or so. I'm not sure when, but I'm going to try to get that done so we can get that engine ready to go back together. But I'm definitely going to pressurize the oiling system to make sure that we're getting the same amount of oil out of that journal that sits the cam journal between the two exhaust valves. Because if, say, there's a tight cap on one of those journals, there may not be as much oil coming out of the sides to lubricate the rocker arm. So the way these engines work is it's kind of a splash lubrication system. Typically, you would have a hydraulic lifter, and the hydraulic lifter would squirt oil out the pivot ball and kind of throw onto the cam, and everything would get a lot of lubrication. But this has solid lifters in it, so it's very possible that those lifters they don't have an oiling hole, so we're not getting any additional oil there. So this is basically getting oil from the cam journals, squirting out oil, the excess oil that's coming out, and then that's what gets onto the because the camshaft is flinging it off and then getting onto the valve spring, valve retainer, and then eventually lubricating the valve stem in the guide. So that's something we're going to look at. And this thing's always had solid lifters in it, so I don't think that's the issue, although that would probably be a way of making it better. But something we're going to go across, try to do our due diligence and figure out what the situation is, because we've now seen this multiple times. And one of the things that Tyler and I were talking about is this engine used to have, when it came from the engine builders that originally designed the engine, or designed the race portion of the engine, they were running very loose valve lash. And I was talking to a friend of mine at Comp Cams. He's a high-end engineer, and he actually did some design work on the cams that are in this motor. He was saying that he didn't know why they ran extreme lash like that, and it needed to be tightened down. Well, since we've tightened the lash down, that's what kind of, I'm thinking about it, but I'm kind of thinking that's when our lubrication or our sticky valve thing happened. So again, what Tyler was saying was maybe that's, when we had a lot of lash, that takes some of the lift away. So it's very possible that the rocker arm it's got too much travel now because we've tightened the lash, which gave the valve a lot more lift. I think between the lash, I think we gained like 20 thousandths in lift, which in a valve stem, that's a lot. So it's very possible that's what the situation is, but we definitely need to come to figure out why it's doing it, so we can stop it. We don't want this to be a continual thing. Overhead cam engines are really a major pain to take the cylinder head off, so it's not something you want to be doing all the time. Plus the fact with Leo being on the West Coast and me being on the East Coast, and I just don't have room to store the car here, it just snowballs into a long time that the car is down in between repairs. So we need to try to get back on this thing and get that back going for him, and then we can try to go out there and light the world on fire next time we go to the track. And that's the whole biggest thing, is we're trying to put out all these little fires with this motor so that when we do go back to the track, we'll have it, it's going to haul butt, and we're going to be happy and all that stuff, because we're slowly getting all the bugs worked out of this thing. So that's pretty much it for the 4200. I'm going to try to show you guys some stuff next week on that. Hopefully I figure out something on it, but we'll go from there. That's where we got to start with that. So the other thing I did, even though we had a short week, is I've been working on the shifter console and the engine wiring harness on the Oleynik. So I wanted to show you guys. Let's see here. So this is the shifter box now ready to be installed in the truck. You can see I installed some LED lighting and some switches. So what our warning lighting system is, there's no warning lights in the dash because it didn't have electronic transmission back in '76. So we had to put the warning lights here plus these fuse right inside the box, so it just makes wiring easy. So we have yellow, which is your check engine light, so that way if the computer gets a error code, a diagnostic trouble code error, the yellow light will light up. And then we have a red light for transmission overheat. In this unit, there's a internal temp sensor inside the pan in the valve body of the transmission, which monitors transmission oil temperature. And if it gets to an overheat, which I believe is 225, this red light will light up. And then we have two switches, which these are going to correlate with these two. So this switch here, these are continuous latching switches. So you push down this side, it stays down and stays on the position 1, or position 2 will do the same thing. It's not a momentary. So with the switch closest to the lights, position 1 is tow haul mode. If you're familiar with your Chevy trucks with a 4L80 or with the Allison, they have a tow haul button on the end of the shifter stalk. And what that does is actually the computer has two transmission shift strategies in the transmission or in the computer, so that when it's in standard, the shift points are a little higher and it shifts a little quicker because they're just moving through the gears and everything. And then when you put it into tow haul mode, now it will hold the shifts a lot longer, so that if you're climbing a grade or something, it just doesn't keep upshifting, and then you get into a position where the engine is bogging down. So it'll hold those positions a little longer. And I was actually wrong. When it's in standard, it shifts shorter and lower RPM, and when it's in tow haul, it actually shifts higher. So that way it holds it. And so like in my Duramax, when you're in standard, it usually shifts the motor, shifts the transmission when the motor reaches about 2,200 RPM or by mile per hour. And when it's in tow haul, it pulls the gears out to about 25 to 2,600 RPM. So that way when it falls back into the next shift, so when the RPMs fall, when it makes the upshift, it falls into the peak torque. So that's the whole idea there. So when you don't have a load, you don't have to be at peak torque all the time because you're not pulling a load. So you get better economy that way. But when you're hauling a load, you always want to be as close to peak torque as you can. So that's what the tow haul mode will do. So when it's in tow haul mode, this green light will light up to indicate that it was what it is. Now the guy that writes the software for these Allison transmissions also puts the second position in, which you can wire or not. I figured it's there. Why not? I'll go ahead and wire it in. And that is a gear reduction position. So when it's in that position, it will run the first 4 gears, which is first gear, second gear, third gear, which are a gear reduction. Fourth gear is 1-to-1, and then fifth is overdrive. So in the reduction mode, when the blue light is lit, it will not go into overdrive. So if you wanted to use engine braking, or if you just didn't want it to go in overdrive because it built up too much heat in the transmission, you could flip it into position 2, and the blue light will turn on, and that should help you work the way it's going. Now, I've never used that before, so I wired it in anyway since it was an option in the unit, and I had to put a switch in for the tow haul anyway, so I figured why not wire it up. And lastly, we have the second switch over here, which is going to be our new switch for the 2-speed rear end, which more than likely we're probably never going to use. Position 1 will be in the standard ratio direct drive, which is 5.59-to-1 in this truck rear end. And then the position 2 would put it into low range in the rear end, which is, I think it's 7.89 or something high like that. So with the gear splits in the original manual transmission, you actually had to shift back and forth between high low to to get all the shifts involved. So because they had the transmission gear ratios spread out, you could go high or go low in second gear, which you'd be taking off first would be a granny gear. So you'd be second low, you'd rev up the engine to 3,000, you'd shift into high rear end in second, and then you would drive that till you got to 3,000 RPM. Then you go back to low and into third, and then high in third, and then low in fourth. And because fourth and fifth on the manual Clark transmission were very close together, you would go fourth low, fifth low, then click high and go fourth high, fifth high. So when you're driving the truck, you had to always be thinking, where I need to go next, and it was really a real pain in the butt driving it that way. But with a manual transmission, you got a clutch, you don't have any slip, so it was crucial. And of course, the engine that was in there, the 366, had a very short RPM range and a very small torque window. So that's why they did that, to try to keep the engine in peak torque. Now that we have the 8.1, which is over 100 horsepower and over 200 foot-pounds of torque more, and we have the overdrive transmission automatic with a torque converter, which does torque multiplication instead of being fixed 1-to-1. When I did the gear ratios, it looks like we would be able to drive the vehicle in high range almost all the time. Maybe the only time you'd want to use low range would be to come out of say you're on the highway and you're coming out of a truck stop or off a entrance ramp or something like that, and you got a grade right in front of you immediately, a pretty good mountain or whatever to climb. You could go into low and run through the gears that way, and then click into high. Now, I know when we had the manual transmission, you had to kind of double clutch it to get it, the rear end to shift. So not sure when how that's all going to work. I'm assuming we're going to have to click the transmission in neutral, do the high-low switch, and then pull the transmission back into gear. But that's an assumption, and we'll have to see how all that goes. So that's to be announced, because I'm not really sure. So, but yeah, I think that came out nice. I think hopefully the LEDs aren't going to be super bright, but we'll give you indication of where you're at, what's going on, and information center, you need that so you can tell what's going on. So the other thing I worked on is the wiring harness. So let's see, go back here. So just here was the transmission harness. We were putting it together. You can see here's our longest sensors we had, but the harnesses came 10 feet long, and you had to cut them and make them fit. And so that was just one that we were doing there. That was the GM ends that go into the transmission, into the TCU. There's the transmission main body plug, and you can see how I had it all on my table, all set up with branches. And then there it was covered up with all the looms, and you can see there all the branching where all the connectors come out of it. And just a close-up of some of the other connectors on there. Neutral safety, that's also in the neutral safety unit, shift select unit. And then you had your 3 speed, you have a input speed sensor, a turbine speed sensor, and an output speed sensor. And of course the main transmission plug that it controls your oil temp warning, and all your shift solenoids and the accumulators and stuff like that. Lockup solenoids for the torque converter lockup. So that's all done. So next was the engine harness, and so this is just a factory Holley Terminator harness, all stretched out, and you can see the transmission harness started on this board and ended on this board, and just the straight leg portion of this Holley harness is the same length. So they're super long. They make them that way so that the end user doesn't have to make his own harness and will fit pretty much wherever you need to mount your ECU. Typically right around this area here, this first junction is where your firewall mount would be. But now in this situation, it's all going to have to be mounted inside the ECU is mounted inside the shift box. So it is literally 18 inches away from the engine. So we don't need 3.5 feet of main harness. I'd have nowhere to put it all. So got to tear it apart and make it new. So just another picture. You can see this table is an 8-foot table, so you can see how long that harness is. Just this is the engine side of it. All your different sensors, coil packs, injectors, TPS, IAC, all that stuff. So they're pulling the harness apart, getting all the coverings off, so then I can start moving different components. You can see like your CAN bus for the handheld screen where you do your tuning. That's down about 2 feet from the ECU, and so is the main relay, which operates the fuel pump and injectors and coils, power-ups. So again, we don't need it down there. We need it up here by the ECU. So here I'm getting this straightened out. So kind of hard to tell here, but there you can see I've got the CAN bus moved up within 4 inches of the ECU, as also the fuse holder and the relay holder. This cable tie right here basically is going to be going through the floor, so I did leave about a foot of harness that will be inside the ECU box. And then this first junction will be at the back of the engine block. So this is from where like the shifter hole is in the floor for a manual shift, and that would be at the back of the engine block, top of the bell housing. And we have our oil pressure and our crankshaft speed sensor, which are both on the flange of the back of the block. And then about 45 inches from this firewall junction is where we have our coil packs and different things. This real long one here, that's the cam sensor, which is going to go to the front of the engine block. It's got to go to the timing cover below the water pump. That's why that is quite long. And map sensors on top of the intake manifold, so that's a little longer there. And then we have our here I don't have them done yet, but the TPS, IAC, and air intake temp. So shortened up the harness considerably. Probably took about between a foot and 2.5 feet out of a lot of the wiring, and still have to finalize. I still have a couple wires to do and a couple of splices. All these orange and blacks here all have to be put into a main splice joint where you have 5 volt coming from the ECU, and it goes 5 volt to a bunch of the different sensors, and then sensor grounds, which is the black with the white tracer. And so this has got to be put together yet, and then we'll go ahead and cover it all up, and when it's all done, it'll look very similar to the transmission harness that I finished. Okay, so that's all the slides I had for that now. So that's we're making progress on the Oleynik. I did get the radiator support mounted in the truck last week. I went up Friday and mounted that, and I kind of ran into an issue there. So the engine is sitting in the same exact location that the original engine sat in, but one thing that I didn't measure, I should have took into consideration, I just assumed, well, it's got a big block water pump on. I've got a big block water pump. Well, the original truck engine did have a specific water pump for it, and I didn't measure it. It looked like it was kind of in the same place, but it does seem like it was probably about the center shaft of the water pump, where the pulley and the fan ride was probably about 1 inch to 2 inches higher than where the 8.1 liter is. So the bottom edge of the cooling fan is basically still sitting in the same location as the 366. However, the fan on the 88.1 is about 21 inches across, and the one on the fixed blade that was on the 366 was probably 23 inches across, or 22 inches across, because when I measured the opening in the shroud's opening is about 24. So when I go up there tomorrow, it's one thing I'm going to try to put a radiator in the core support now that it's mounted, and to go ahead and see how the shroud looks. We're probably going to end up making a new shroud out of aluminum. And it looks like I'm probably going to need to make a spacer to move the fan back off of the fan clutch about 1/2 of an inch. It's just a little tight to the front. It may be fine, but I just want to make sure we have plenty of clearance. Right at this point, the radiator shroud, I didn't get any pictures of that on Friday. Kind of was rushing to get in and out of there. But it just sits on 2 bolts going through the frame. So and I don't have the fenders or the inner fenders mounted, so it's very possible the shroud's not in 100% in the correct location yet. I mean, it's mounted in the right holes, but there is some play there. Plus, we redid the centerpiece there too, so that could also be maybe those holes weren't exactly they're exactly where the rusted piece was, but that doesn't mean the rusted piece was correct, because with all the rust it could have shifted, whatever. So that's one of the things I want to do is bolt the inner fenders in on the truck, because they bolt to the cab and to the front of the bottom front edge of the core support. And then I can also kind of roughly hang some fenders on there and make sure that the core support's in the right location. Then I'll put the radiator in, and we'll work on the shroud and stuff. So just little things we've got to do there yet. Fine tuning into one of the, unfortunately one of the issues with having the truck 21 miles away is that you just can't go out and check something. You got to do it all at one time while you're there. So, and the traffic coming back in the afternoons is horrendous. Before 3 o'clock, I can make it back in about 25 to 30 minutes. Once it gets about 3:30 till 6:30, it's an hour to hour and 20 minute drive. So I definitely try to hustle out of there before the traffic gets that bad. But see how tomorrow goes, because I got a lot of things I need to. I got the injectors to put in, so I can finally get the engine sealed up, the throttle body. That's another thing I got to. Once we get the radiator and the shroud in, I got to work on what configuration I'm going to be able to do with the air intake tube. At that point, we should be ready to lay the harness in and finish wiring up harness, both the TCU and the ECU to the vehicle. And if I have time, I got some of the components for the fuel system, so I'll work on that and get this thing closer to ready to fire up and hopefully get it driving soon. So those are kind of the things that we're doing now. Just trying to get that thing finished. That's really messing up my timing. Also we ordered the parts for Finn's 69 Corvette with the big block in it. I don't remember if we discussed that last week, but the rock arms it has in there, you can't hardly adjust you can't get a socket and still adjust a rocker arm because it's wedged in there. So what I figured out was the valves were too tight from when the engine was assembled, and that's why it was popping back through the throttle body. So I've got poly locks coming for that, which will they'll put the hex above the socket, above the rocker arm, so you can put a short socket on there and adjust it and feel the lash and the push rods to get the valve lash set properly. And that should fix that thing. And I'm going to go ahead and put a set of aluminum valve covers on it, because the stamped steel ones have oil deflectors built in and they won't fit over the poly lock on the rock arm. So I found a set of cast aluminum valve covers, which I like better because the gasket surface seals a lot better. And so we'll try to get that done. I know I've got the warehouse said the poly locks have to come from out of state. So hopefully I'll get that before next Tuesday. If not, it'll be for the following week. But just trying to keep making progress on the vehicles here in the shop, so we can get back. I got a couple things to do to the NASCAR yet, so that we can get back on the Vet Hawk. I'm dying to get back on that thing. So we'll see how all that goes, and we'll go from there. That's all we can do. So with that, I think we pretty much everything I had for the week. Okay, thanks, Chris. Chuck's truck is doing good. We got fuel. We got brake lines in it. Dry shaft should be here any day. The engine trans is in it, but that's about as far as we've gotten, because right now I have Dave's car underneath it. We were working last week with the stereo system, so the dash is out of it. So now the steering column's out. So now it's kind of a pain to move the car. But hopefully we can get back on Chuck's truck. His Pontiac GTA is at the body shop being painted, so kind of taking it easy on him. I got a list of fuel system parts we need to get for the truck, but I figured, he needs to, since the car should be in paint today, or was being painted today, let him work on his expenses on that for right now, and we'll get back to the truck once we get some of this other stuff cleared up. But moving along, the T-type, I forgot about that too. The T-type, so the Borg Warner turbocharger that they've got for this car, the center cartridge, which is the piece where it goes in between the compressor side, the intake side, and the turbine side, and that's where your bearings, your oil goes in, your oil drain goes out. Well, this one is very narrow, and the covers are very big for the compressor and the turbine. And to get the angle of the turbine needs to sit at, and to make the cartridge straight up and down, you want where the oil feed goes in, needs to be pretty perpendicular to the ground. They say about 10 degrees forward or back is about all you really get. Otherwise, you start having draining issues on the bottom of the turbo. So I've been having a heck of a time trying to find fittings that'll work in there. Even the factory style hollow tubing piece goes in there won't fit, because if you look straight into between the compressor housing and the turbine housing to the drain, they're overlapping over top of the drain. So it's like you need something oval shaped to get between there, or you need to make the drain hose turn before it gets near the flanges. So I've got some more fittings coming. I've gotten about 2 handfuls of fittings that I've been trying to work with, trying to find something that'll work with that. Hopefully this new batch that I got coming will probably be here on tomorrow's Wednesday, probably Thursday. Hopefully I can figure out something that'll work on that. Getting close. I may have to do a little machining to the turbine flange, but I haven't had anything that was close enough to go with that yet. But that's something that needs to be straightened out, because I can't really move forward on that project either till that turbo's back on and the drain lines are all hooked up and the oil feed is set up so that we can actually pressurize the oiling system and go from there. So little steps, make 2 steps forward and 1 step back on these projects. But I got enough. I'm juggling enough in the air that it's keeping me busy anyway. So anyway, so that's pretty much, as far as I know, it is all the updates we have on there for the week. Monday being holiday, kind of was a short week. Saturday we worked on cleaning the shop and organizing and stuff like that. So not a lot of progress was made then either, but the shop's a lot cleaner, so we can move around and get things done better. That's one of the fun things about having a small shop and having a lot of equipment, is there's always a pile of equipment that has to be somewhere. It's either under one of the cars under the lift, or it's in the way, or it's here or there. So a lot of maneuvering has to be done to go from job to job. But we're working through it, and we got a lot of cleaning done this weekend, so that is going to aid in that situation quite a bit. But So like I said, that's probably pretty much what we got for this week. Try to get some more stuff next week. Obviously, we'll have some stuff from the Oleynik. Have the wiring harness hopefully done and have that. And I'll have some pictures of the turbo debacle so you can see what I'm talking about. And maybe get the 4-cylinder short block assembled, and I can show you the crank drag and all that stuff we've been talking about. And if we're lucky, maybe even get somewhere on the 4200 cylinder head. So a lot to get done, and only got a couple more days of the week left to do it. So we'll see how that all works out. But there's always tomorrow. So but anyway, with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and close out the night. I appreciate everybody. Episode 96. We're 4 away. Like I said, I just got that new camera lens, which you can see you can change the filtering. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get some good shots on a future welding episode. I'm kind of thinking that might be what we do for episode 100. But I've got stuff in the shop, so I can start working on that too. Just another thing on my list of things to do. But anyway, so go ahead and call it a night. Appreciate everybody coming out, hanging out in the chat, watching the show. Remember, click the like button, helps with the algorithm. If you're not subscribed, which according to the analytics from YouTube, only about a third of my viewers are subscribed. So please subscribe. It's free. Nothing's going to happen. You're not going to get junk mail or nothing, but it will give you. You will get an email notification when I put new videos out, and that's about the only thing you would see. Otherwise, your life will be exactly the same as it always was. Plus, it'll make it easier to find the channel if you're looking, if you're searching on YouTube, because you can look on your thing and there's a subscriber button that has all your channels that you watch. So with that, I'm going to say good night. Appreciate it all. Y'all have a good week, and we'll go from there, right?